Welcome back to LimQ Plus, everyone. On this channel, I'm 100%ing Breath of the Wild by a bit every day until Tears of the Kingdom comes out, which is in 158 days. Today, I want to talk a little bit about shrines. I've realized that in this playthrough, I haven't really activated too many shrines yet. I kind of want to do that, and I thought that's a fitting topic. I would consider myself as kind of a shrine connoisseur. I have always traditionally done a lot of shrine speedruns, either all shrines, where obviously you do all of the shrines, 100% where you also do all of the shrines because it's part of a quest line, Master Sword restricted speedruns where you have to get the Master Sword by actually getting 40 hearts, which means you had to do shrines. I've beaten every single shrine with glitches, glitchless, with runes, without runes. I've done a lot of shrines and I really like them. That being said, if somebody comes to my stream and asks me, yo Lim, do you want shrines to come back in Tears of the Kingdom? My answer is no, I don't. And that might sound a little bit weird at first after what I just said, but today I'm here to explain why. I'm obviously also in the camp of people, first of all, like so many other people, that missed traditional dungeons in Breath of the Wild. I really liked traditional dungeons. My favorite Zelda game before Breath of the Wild was The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, where in my opinion the dungeons were the highlights. I really liked the boss fights. The Zand fight was one of my favorites. Kind of revisiting old dungeons and going through the memories of all of these boss fights and recycling mechanics. I thought it was amazing. I was a big fan of that fight, and just boss fights in general I'm missing in this game, obviously. I think the blights are alright, but it's definitely quite cool to have a really cool boss design, something like Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, or the Water Temple boss there, or the Desert Temple boss there. I mean, just the bosses in general were much more impressive, much cooler, much more fun. And I miss those. And I also miss dungeons, and Breath of the Wild has the Divine Beast and a lot of shrines. Now again, I like shrines. I think the puzzles inside them are pretty cool, but especially in Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like they would be a little bit out of place. Now, I think the reasons that shrines exist in this game is kind of to test your skill with the runes and the Sheikah Slate. Some of them are obviously combat strats, checks to check your skill in combat. And the test of strength, well, they're kind of cool. I personally think they get very repetitive. Also, I can't tell you how big of a deal it is to not have the compass. It's actually insane. Not knowing in which direction your wind bomb is gonna go is massive. But I know why the shrines are here, and the puzzle shrines I really liked. I think in terms of shrines, my favorite region in Breath of the Wild was the Gerudo region. It had a lot of these like electric puzzle shrines that required some critical thinking. I really, really like Keo Rook, which I don't have unlocked here. It's the shrine in the middle of a Korok Forest. For some, it was probably the trickiest one in terms of puzzling. It's one of the star constellations, where you essentially have to figure out what these star constellations mean and place orbs accordingly. I thought the Dueling Peak shrine were great. I'm actually planning on doing a review of every single shrine from a casual and speedrunning perspective on my main channel soon, probably early next year, because I have 2 other videos planned, so look forward to that. But again, I think at the end of the day, there is a lot of them, 120, and they fill out a lot of space on the map, and if they were created, if their creation meant that we didn't get traditional dungeons, I absolutely would trade the shrines for a couple more traditional dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. I would much prefer that. Now, in general, I do like shrines, like I said. And here's my suggestion. It's kind of like a wish. I really don't think we're gonna get this for Tears of the Kingdom. So in this game, we have the Trial of the Sword. The Trial of the Sword is also pretty good. I'm gonna briefly talk about this after my idea here, what I would prefer over the Trial of the Sword. It's fine. It was fun for a little bit, and you can also speedrun it, and it's kind of whatever. There's skips for it. I'm not a super big Trial of the Sword fan, I think, as time has passed. But it's alright. It was solid for what it is. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about is what if instead of the Trial of the Sword and Tears of the Kingdom, we have traditional dungeons, but we also have something like the Trial of the Mind. So traditionally, these Zelda games always had something like the Trial of the Sword. I think it's called the Cave of Ordeals in Twilight Princess. I'm not exactly sure, because I played the game originally in German. When I played Twilight Princess for the first time, I didn't even speak English, or very poorly. So I actually don't know what it's called, but the Trial of the Swords and that cave I'm familiar with. I haven't actually played every single Zelda game. I think there's a boss rush in Skyward Sword, as far as I'm aware, but I never really have done that either. But that being said, the idea of a boss rush is more appealing to me. But anyway, let's stick with the Trial of the Mind. That's my idea. So instead of the Trial of the Sword, where we have floors that get harder and harder in terms of testing our combat, which is something that this game was lacking, I will say, because again, we only had the Blight fights and the test of strengths, which would be repetitive, so the Trial of the Sword was a nice change of pace, but again, not my absolute favorite content in the game. But what if instead we had traditional dungeon at the Trial of the Mind? So the Trial of the Mind would be a gauntlet of puzzles that get progressively harder and harder. Now, something like that is obviously... It's very cheesable, right? If you're not into puzzles, then you can easily just look up the solutions on YouTube, and I don't know if developers have an issue with that. You can look up the solutions for the Trial of the Sword and tricks on YouTube, but you still have to actually test your skill. Obviously, I think that's something that you shouldn't really consider, because at the end of the day, it's up to you if you want to take this as a real challenge, or if you just want the reward and look the solution up on YouTube. Obviously, you could look up the solution to every single shrine on this game in YouTube, but I would really enjoy this, and I would like the developers to go all out with tricky puzzles. Let's separate it in a beginner, advanced, and like mastermind trial, where the trickiest puzzles that Zelda developers have ever done are presented to us. I think that could be really cool. Genshin Impact has actually done a good job with adding some really tricky puzzles that really require you to use your brain. And I love that. Not everybody loves that though, which is why this should be optional content, just like the Trial of the Sword. Now when it comes to the Trial of the Sword, I think I would like the developers to take a different approach, especially ever since I played Hollow Knight. I think the Pantheons in Hollow Knight are a late game dream. And what I mean by that is, and even the Trial of the Mind is obviously something that you could potentially speedrun, but I am for everything that adds longevity to the game. And I think the Pantheons in Hollow Knight, if you haven't seen them, they're essentially a huge gauntlet that's separated in multiple challenges, from the first, which is just like the early game bosses, to the last, which is literally every single boss in the game with some additional restrictions. And you can also put other restrictions on yourself. You can make it so that your weapon does less damage, that you only survive one hit. And these Pantheons have spawned a tremendous amount of content around them. People that would literally speedrun the Pantheons, that would do the Pantheons hitless, that would do the Pantheons with only doing 1 damage. And I think that's really good for longevity. So the Trial of the Sword, in my opinion, while you can speedrun it, it's not very rewarding to repeat it a lot, right? Because you can't really test out different builds and different strategies in it. You can slightly alter them, but because the equipment in the Trial of the Sword is always the same, there's only really so much you can do when it comes to revisiting that trial. Again, in general I had fun, but I would much prefer something closer to the Pantheons in Hollow Knight, even if that's just some sort of boss rush. I mean, if we wanted to go all out here, this is something that I really, really don't think Nintendo will do ever. But if they did it, I think it would be amazing for the game's community, and especially for the people that commit a lot of time to these games. But what if we had a combat challenge that we can set up ourselves, kind of like a Mario Maker thing? Some people might not like this idea, but it could just be optional late game content, where people can make their own gauntlets. You can place the enemies, you can mess around with the health, you can maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe it goes a bit too far to saying we have like a shrine creator. But what if they do this? They already have the shrines, right? They already have the shrines. That's actually a different approach that I randomly just thought of. But since they already have all of the shrines in place, what if they don't bring them back, but instead there's going to be there's one shrine, and in this shrine you get to create your own shrine. You can use all of the assets from Guardians to puzzles and make your own shrine, maybe share it online with like some sort of code. Man, imagine how good that would be for longevity, content, and long-term fun with the game. I think it would be amazing, and one of the ways that Tears of the Kingdom could really be a long-lasting game and not just feel like a Breath of the Wild extension. But that being said, I enjoyed my time with shrines. I am still doing 100% speedruns. I've probably done every single shrine about 100 times at this point. I know what they're there for, but I think we are over them now. If we take it literally, right? The shrines were made by the monks to test Link's strength, to to make him grow, right? And since most of us that will play Tears of the Kingdom have beaten this game, and maybe all of the shrines, so at least a bunch of them, I'm assuming, I think it's fair to say that we have passed that test. We have passed the Monk's test. We can move on now and go to the real challenge. So I really don't think shrines should be back. Also, I probably should be stopping here soon, because apparently I forgot how to do the wind bomb trick, which is not very good. I'm probably... okay, I'll probably back this up somehow. But yeah, those were my loose thoughts about shrines in Breath of the Wild and their potential return in Tears of the Kingdom. To summarize it, I don't think they should be back. I think there's really cool opportunities to get us something similar with a lot more longevity. The community has done an amazing job of somehow making these shrines, I mean, me included, giving myself a little bit of a pat on the back. My video about doing all of the shrines runeless on my YouTube channel did really well, and there was one completely new way to take on shrines. And as a community, we have done a good job with giving this game more longevity than it probably deserves. I mean, no, that's a hard word. The game does deserve a lot of longevity because it is an amazing game. But yeah, maybe we'll get something along those lines. Some Pantheon-esque combat challenge, maybe some test of mind where the developers can really go wild, because nobody has to beat these challenges. They can really truly live out their puzzle fantasies and give us the trickiest ones they've ever made. I don't think anyone would really have a problem with that, especially if there was a cool reward behind those challenges. Then I guess people would be like, oh, I hate puzzles, but I want to get the cool reward. I mean, then honestly, you can look it up on YouTube, because that works really well for any puzzle sort of thing. You just do whatever that creator does. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this today. I think I probably activated like 6-7 shrines, which means I haven't done actually as much progress on the minimap today as I wanted to. Almost 18% though, and we still have 158 days. Probably going to be focusing on shrines a little bit more. They're nice as war points when I want to backtrack to some Korok seeds on this playthrough. Thank you so much for watching though. Recently there's been a lot more viewers on the channel. I appreciate that you guys are still actively interested in topics around Breath of the Wild, and you're probably just as excited for Tears of the Kingdom as me. So once again, thank you for watching, and if you want, I will see you tomorrow.